Hello, comrades. At Red Line TV, we want to briefly discuss the NEC elections in the Labour Party. That's the National Executive Committee elections. About a quarter of the NEC members have just been elected. Last night, the results have come out. There's the section of the CLP members. The membership can vote for 9 members. Of them, 4 seats went to the right, 4 to the left, and 1 went to Anne Black, who I cannot tell if she's left or right. She's a centrist of some sort. A shockingly low turnout, which is probably not quite surprising. There were about 70,000 votes were cast. Around 30,000 of these went for left-wing candidates. If the recent figures, membership figures, are correct, and we can dispute that, there was just over 400,000 members, apparently, as the Labour Party says it still has. 70,000 votes cast, that would mean a 16% turnout. I've not seen figures that low in recent history for NEC elections. If this figure is correct, who knows? We've seen also a right-winger, Carol Sewell, was re-elected to NEC BAME representatives. Elsie Greenwood, also right-winger, beat Lara McNeil to secure the youth rep position. And for the Welsh representative contest, the former First Minister Carwyn Jones was elected over the left-backed candidate Lynn Jones. So it looks a bit like a mixed bag, Graham, but you were relatively happy about it, weren't you?
I'm never happy, but in really challenging conditions, I think it was as good as we could have expected. I mean, just one slight difference of view, I think really we have to say it was 4 for the left and 5 for the right. I think you're being slightly too kind to Anne Black, who is on the right on most issues. Yes, it was a really low turnout, which reflects the loss of membership. I don't trust this figure of 430,000, so I guess the turnout is slightly more than 16%. And what we saw was a diminution of the percentage of the left vote by about just under 4%, and an increase of the right vote by a bit, I don't know, 9% or something, and the difference being the loss of the independents. So that's not good. But given the conditions, I think it shows a remarkable resilience of the Labour left. I mean, getting on for late, I don't know, I'm not sure of the exact figures. I haven't done all the number crunching, but slightly less than 30,000 voted for the left candidates on that basis. And I think this shows the lie of those who say that the Labour left is dead. It isn't. We're fighting in difficult conditions, but it's not dead. And I think there's another positive, which is the vote for Naomi. Remember, Naomi got on against
Naomi Wimborne Idrissi.
Sorry, the JVL supported candidate, who was supported by the Grassroots 5, but not by Momentum. So she was fighting not just the right, but a section of the left as well. And I think it's a remarkable result. And honestly, I thought the odds were against her. So I think that was good. What I would just finally say, just to begin with, is that I regard Momentum's mistake in not supporting her and in splitting the left is something that we shouldn't kind of celebrate because it exposes them. I think that we should regard it with sadness rather than anger. But this is not the first time they've split the left. And I think it's really, really disappointing that they've done that. And it's come back to bite them because one of their main candidates themselves lost out.
Just going to explain.
That's a great problem.
Yeah. For the 4 left-wingers include, as you say, Naomi Wimborne Idrissi, who was elected in the 14th round, Jess Barnard, Yasmin Dar, and Gemma Bolton, Yasmin Dar and Gemma Bolton are really not Momentum candidates, are they? They're more with the Campaign for Labour Party Democracy, as far as I can tell. Jess Barnard seems to seems to have run as a sort of semi-independent with her own campaign, etc. Who didn't get in was Mish, Rahman, who was on the NEC previously, and he's received more than 1,500 fewer first preference votes than Naomi. That is quite telling, Jackie, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a disaster for the way Momentum have behaved. And it's in fact been compounded, hasn't it, by the email that they have sent out to members now, which yet again does not congratulate Naomi. I mean, this is absolutely extraordinary behavior from Momentum. And whether you're in Momentum or you're out of Momentum, you should be objecting to this if you're on the left. Momentum really need to give some serious thought to what they're doing on the left and what their purpose is.
I'd also like to discuss quickly what we think the role of the left on the NEC should be, because I mean Momentum has slightly changed its view on the witch hunt in that it now supports unfairly suspended members. However, unfairly expelled members are told not to contact Momentum, or the other way around. You don't bother. So what do we think the role of an NEC candidate in today's conditions, which is proscriptions of left-wing groups, witch hunt going on, etc. What could a left-winger even do on the NEC?
Well, I think it is difficult conditions, but that doesn't mean there shouldn't be a voice and a voice of the left there, and also people watching and seeing how things are handled and speaking out and representing members' interests. And it's very different. Members' interests are not the same as trades unions. We know that some of the trades unions there are not voting with the left. You've got people like Unison and GMB, etc., who are pretty Starmerite. So the amount of voice that members have is actually extremely restricted on the NEC, and of course it's restricted on purpose. So to have somebody like Naomi, let's just think about, this is somebody who has been an extremely important member of the Jewish Voice for Labour, and we have seen today the level of actual anti-Semitism and hatred and harassment that has gone on by the right about the election of what we think is possibly the only Jewish member of the NEC. It is absolutely extraordinary. I actually asked this morning, Luke Akehurst whether he was going to speak out and, call some of these people off and put some measures in place to actually support Naomi. I mean, if this had been happening, just think about this. If we could imagine this happening to a JLM member, the press would be on it. Ruth Smith would be on it. Certainly, our great leader would be on it. And yet, what we see is one of the few Jewish voices is actually being allowed to be attacked in this way. And this is when the Ford report has pointed out towards the hierarchy of racism. It has said Jewish Voice for Labour should be involved in training. And even though the NEC are due to actually start discussing the Ford report in September, we see this happening and there is silence.
Graham, I mean, Naomi will be in a tricky position, isn't it? As soon as she talks to anybody who's been expelled or whatever, she will be in trouble. Her window of, maneuver is very small, isn't it?
Yes, it is. But let's be clear what the role is now of the NEC, because I want to go back to the original question as well. It's not to win anything. There's a few trade union representatives like the firefighters and others there, but they're in a small minority. So what's the role? It's firstly to monitor and highlight to the broader movement what the hell the party is actually doing. And secondly, it is to build a bridge, I think, with this emerging movement outside, a movement of resistance in the trade unions and beyond on the cost of living through enough is enough and all of that. But above all, I think, it's to try to build a bridge to the future, because I think there is going to come a crunch between Labour and the trade unions. And it's already happening, but I think that we'll come on to this in future programmes, but I think the Tories are about to make a huge error and elect Truss as their leader, which gives Starmer a real chance of forming the next government. And then we're going to see all hell let loose, possibly between a Labour government and the trade unions. And that's why we've got to be around, and why it's important there are voices at the highest levels of the party in the NEC to support the trade union struggle. So I think that there's everything for them to be able to do still, short of winning votes at the NEC. That ain't ever going to happen. Not for, I say ever, certainly not in the immediate or foreseeable future.
And Naomi certainly, I think, would have put up some opposition to, for example, to the IRA misdefinition on anti-Semitism that was passed by the NEC, including by the left. So I think there's room for improvement when it comes to the left on the NEC, which has not used its voice at all. And we're very much hoping, and we're going to be pushing Naomi from the left to make sure she will use her voice without being, stupid about it or getting herself expelled over nothing. Jackie, do you want to quickly talk about our next program on Monday, September the 12th?
Yeah, well, I think it's going to be quite an interesting one because it comes after we see who is going to be our next Prime Minister. And what we're going to be considering is the war on the left. And we're going to be looking at what this new regime will mean for the left, for socialists, for the working class, for the majority of people in this country at this point in time. I think it's going to be interesting, and to see what is actually going to happen to Starmer and the vacuum of policies when you've got somebody like Truss leading the Tory party.
And we're going to call it Class War, because
war.
That's what's been going on. And we've seen it in the Labour Party very, very vividly over the last 7 years, and it, of course, continuing inside and outside the Labour Party. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you September the 12th.